It's time for a political pulse check on our Rochester. Today, we're continuing to follow the presence of federal agents in Rochester on Tuesday morning. Several people lining Westminster Road in the city's Park Avenue neighborhood. They could be heard chanting "ICE out of Rochester" as some carried signs in protest. While details on the investigation are limited, federal officials say Border Patrol was assisting ICE's enforcement and removal operations. As that was happening, a Border Patrol vehicle was damaged. Our cameras had actually captured video of that vehicle with 4 flat tires. Those on scene say the agents were after men working on a roof.
I showed up today at a call from the New York Immigration Coalition as an attorney out of concern that there needed to be official warrants. This is a private residence, so we just want to make sure that everything is happening within the bounds of the law.
They're here putting on a roof, trying to make $1 and paying taxes on that dollar, and ICE was here bothering them. So I came to bother ICE.
In a statement, the chairman of the Monroe County Republican Committee condemned the protest as, quote, completely disgusting. He went on to say, in part, the ICE agents were, quote, just doing their job to uphold the rule of law. For a firsthand account on everything that unfolded on Westminster Road, I'm joined now by Monroe County legislator for the 17th District, Rachel Barnhart. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And I will give you a second to respond to the chairman in a moment, but I do want to start with what exactly happened. How was there a large presence of people who knew about this operation going on and were able to meet the Border Patrol agents as they were on scene?
Sure. I mean, we know that ICE has been in our community. We know that in Rochester and Buffalo, ICE has been grabbing roofers, detaining roofers for over immigration issues, deporting them. This has been happening a lot. To my knowledge, this is the first time in Monroe County that local immigration groups and Metro Justice have activated people to actually come to a site to bear witness. And that is what happened yesterday. I started getting messages. I saw Facebook posts early in the morning around 9:30, and I live very close by. And so I got in my car, went over there, and there was a crowd quickly forming. Honestly, as I was walking up to the house and saw the 2 men sitting on the roof, my heart was breaking, and they were stranded. The agents were in the backyard, and there really was no mob. There was no confrontation. It was a lot of people just watching in front of the house. Nobody came to ask anyone to move. People were there to watch. We've got a situation right now where the Supreme Court essentially just said it's okay to racially profile groups of people who are speaking Spanish and who are Hispanic and who are working low-wage jobs. This is going to create a Wild West situation in our country, and it's going to be very dangerous for everyone involved. It's not good. And I do think you're going to see Americans continue to come out and protest these activities, and hopefully they will remain peaceful. But this is not good. This is not a good situation at all.
Come on. It's a daunting climb to one of the holiest sites in Bhutan. Tiger's Nest Monastery seems to defy gravity. Every Bhutanese is expected to complete the pilgrimage to ensure peace and happiness. When it became a democracy in 2008, Bhutan put happiness at the centre of all political policy, inspiring the UN to pass a resolution urging other nations to follow Bhutan's example. But how do you measure it? For many Bhutanese, happiness is more intuitive than it is quantifiable, but ever since it became part of state policy, it's been described roughly as good governance, the balance between nature and economic growth, and also between pleasure and work. In the capital, Thimphu, is the world's only Secretariat of Happiness, and a chief official who takes his job very seriously.
The GNH index is found based on the 9 domains and close to 33 indicators. Things like health, education, living standard, environment, good governance. One is psychological well-being. The other one is community vitality, time use, and cultural diversity.
This is one way people find happiness in Bhutan, through traditional pursuits, such as the national sport, archery. But the nation's happiness policy sometimes misses the mark. Youth unemployment is soaring. 24-year-old Namgay Tenzin is restless for new opportunities, but he can't find suitable work.
It's the major problem in Bhutan right now, as the unemployment, because most of the youngsters, after their completion of graduation, they couldn't find a good job.
Neighbouring India has been generous with financial support, but some think it's time to welcome Chinese investment too. Bhutan has no diplomatic links with its northern neighbour. But balancing ties between fierce regional rivals will be a challenge. It's a risky path. The happiness of the nation could depend upon it.
For me, happiness is just just what I need is a peace and a good leadership in our country.
For me, happiness actually means spending quality times with friends and families and visiting beautiful places and taking pictures.
So there may not be a magical, mystical or even spiritual formula when it comes to finding happiness. But by simply turning its pursuit into policy, Bhutan has done what no other country has. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, in the Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan.
Turning back to the U.S. now, amid President Trump's aggressive immigration crackdown, a new trend is emerging among migrants who once sought that American dream. Many are now self-deporting or ending their journeys to the U.S. in what a new Rolling Stone article calls the Great Reverse Migration. Some migrants, despite traveling thousands of miles to reach the U.S. border, are turning around, seeking new lives elsewhere after hearing about the fallout from the Trump administration's new policies. I want to bring in MSNBC contributor Paula Ramos, who has this exclusive reporting. And Paula, great work. First of all, you are reporting on what is a massive reverse migration that's happening. These people who had traveled north, risking their lives, seeking the American dream, looking at America as the promised land, are now turning around. They're risking their lives to go south. How significant is this?
It's huge. Look, I think if you're the Trump administration, this is a win. You see the southern border, you see the Darien Gap, and you see a story that's very simple. Migration has plummeted, right? During Joe Biden, in the peak of 2024, you had 3,000 migrants per day, Anna, crossing the Darien Jungle, attempting to reach the United States. In June 2025, you know how many people crossed the Darien Jungle? 10. And so if you're Trump, you are completely celebrating the situation, but they're losing sight of a key thing, right? And that is that, yes, people aren't going north, they're going south. And through that journey south, there are thousands of migrants that are letting go of something that I believe is the key asset of this country, and that is this American dream. And so the question is, what happens if you have generations of immigrants that stop looking north, that are looking for whatever they were searching for in the United States elsewhere? And I'll give you numbers very quickly just to really start understanding this trend. Right after Trump is inaugurated, in January and February of 2025, you had 3,000 U.S.-bound migrants that were waiting in limbo in Mexico that were asking for the United Nations for help to help them relocate back to their homelands. Fast forward to June 2025, you have almost 8,000 migrants that are going from Panama to Colombia, going south. So these numbers may seem small, but they're getting larger and larger, and they're increasing. And so that points to something different.
Yeah, and you point out that a large number of the migrants that are deciding to go south are from Venezuela.
Exactly.
But it's not like their lives in Venezuela or the situation on the ground there has changed. I mean, they were fleeing out of desperation to begin with, and now they're turning around. They still have the Darien Jungle, which you describe as being so treacherous and dangerous, in their way.
I mean, think of how desperate you have to be to want to, or at least to believe that life is better in Venezuela under Maduro than it is in the United States under Trump. And so you said something really important, and that is that as we speak, there are so many Venezuelans that are going back and turning back. These are people that are self-deporting from the interior, many Venezuelans that are living in limbo in Mexico, but all of them have one thing in common. And what they tell me is that no matter what, they will not go back through the Darien Jungle. Now, this Darien Jungle that almost cost their life, they will not go back. And so how do you do that? The only way to do that, and that's what we're seeing on the screen right now, is by taking a 12-hour boat ride through the Caribbean Sea. So as we speak, a lot of Venezuelans are taking buses from the southern border through Mexico into Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, they then take more buses into Panama. From Panama, they go to that point right now that we're seeing on the screen, to the eastern coast of Panama. And from that point right there, what you see is that hundreds of migrants every single day are taking these boats. They're paying $280 each. They're being packed into sort of groups of between 30 and 40 people. And they then take this 12-hour boat ride from Panama into Colombia. Now, just to give you an idea, in February of 2025, an 8-year-old Venezuelan girl died, right, because her boat sank. It's risky, yes, but it's not the Darien jungle. But to your question, you know, what sticks with me is the desperation that drives their journey south, because it's the same thing that drives their journey north, no? To flee a dictatorship, right, then to get to the southern border, and then to want to leave again, because in their words, they say, I don't want to go back to a country that is very similar to Venezuela.
All things that we believe are a story.
I'm Gabe Polsky. I make movies. And this is the story of a bizarre journey I took with Patrick McCullum, a guy who may save us all.
My very first war that I ever stopped was in Africa.
He's lived 100 lives as a peacemaker,
helping people all over the planet.
A kung fu master, a prison chaplain to famous serial killers.
Charles Manson, the Menendez brothers.
And he knows how to do just about anything.
I built everything you see here.
It's all up to code, right?
Yeah.
But this was entirely different. He found himself at the very center of an ancient prophecy.
Usted está en la profecía. The prophecy says there will be a man, and he will unite all the indigenous people of the Amazon.
And then what?
The rest of it unfolds.
This all seemed unreal to me.
The Amazon will go down, and many people will die. This is very real. I'm gonna have to do this.
Is the prophecy real?
Profecía.
He is probably the most extraordinary person I've met.
I traveled across the globe in search of answers.
Unite humanity, restore Mother Earth.
It's so hard for me to conceive.
Well, you must be blind, because we are at the place I told you we would be.
Had I gone too far?
He's got this inner conviction which will affect the future of all of us.
One of the hardest things in life is knowing what story to believe.
In 1965, I was pronounced dead. God said, I want you to serve me.
I can only see the top of your face.
But so many of the things were actually happening.
Papi, eres un mensajero. Vamos a ver.
Announcing today that it's shutting its doors after Congress eliminated its federal funding and clawed back $1.1 billion in funds that had already been approved. Joining us now is Bill Nye, the Science Guy. His show ran on PBS for 5 years, but it has, of course, been replayed, rewatched by millions all over the world. Can you just talk a little bit about what the corporation meant for the work that you did and for the kids that you served?
Well, it's why the show became so popular. The show has served to educate people in elementary science for decades, and I'm honored, and it's wonderful. It's great. But part of the reason it was so successful, or is so successful, is we had very compelling research that 10 years old was as old as you could be to get the so-called lifelong passion for science, and it's probably as old as you can be to get a lifelong passion for anything. And I mention it because it was based on research. It was based on science. It was based on provable facts. And that's what shaped the Science Guy show and made it so successful. The same is true of Sesame Street, and the same is true of Mr. Rogers and other shows. So what's going on, everybody, is a little bit in the weeds. The administration is trying to use these rules or laws, which were clearly in my opinion, clearly never intended to be used this way to derail the will of Congress. And so they're using these, apparently they're planning to use this business of impoundment of funds and this extraordinary new legal theory, pocket rescission. And there's no such thing, they're making it up. And the irony is that the communities that are going to be most affected by curtailing public broadcasting are the rural communities that voted for this administration. And I just, as one example, I have met countless people, that is to say more people than I can count, who came to this country from other parts of the world and tell me that they learned to speak English by watching public broadcasting, by watching my show, by watching Sesame Street. And one of the ideas of this administration, which is nominally quite reasonable, is to make English the official language. Well, if you want people to learn English, you want to have public broadcasting. This is just an ironic mess up on their part. Back to you, Casey.
Sir, one big difference too with public broadcasting and its funding is that the focus is on things like the science, things like what you learn from Sesame Street, and not on, advertisements. I think I was only allowed to watch PBS growing up as a child. I think in no small part because my mom cared a lot about that. She didn't want me to have to think about the latest toy that I wanted to buy, but just to be there and learn things. What does that mean for kids?
Well, so part of the reason the Science Guy show was funded was through this thing called the Children's Television Act, because in the 1980s, back in the 20th century, children's television was becoming an ads for toys, which is, if you're a kid, that's fun. You watch a superhero animated show, and then you can buy a physical object, a doll, a action figure of that superhero. That's fun and cool, but it doesn't have the educational value that people in the early 1990s wanted children's programming to have. And for you historians, there was required, television stations were required to have 3 hours of educational programming a week. 3 hours, oh my goodness, our ability to print money is being stopped, oh my. But that turned out to be to the good, and it led to this, in my day, it led to this collaboration between commercial programming, commercial stations and public broadcasting, but it never would have happened without the influence of public broadcasting. So,
Bill Nye, very grateful to have you. Thank you very much.
Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum marked the country's Independence Day on Tuesday by emphasizing national sovereignty amid pressures from the Trump administration in Washington. The Mexican president first began the celebrations Monday night from the National Palace balcony before following up with an address to her cabinet and troops in a formal military parade on Tuesday.
La independencia, libertad y soberanía de México significa
Spain. The Mexican Navy took responsibility for some failures following the recent arrest of high-ranking officers linked to fuel theft.
¿Quién de la historia ha reconocido en frente de miles de mexicanos que venimos a ver el desfile el error tan grande que hubo dentro de la misma organización de la Marina, ¿no? Entonces eso es muy bueno porque es como el respeto al pueblo y respeto a México.
Sheinbaum assumed Mexico's presidency in October, making her the country's first female leader.
On the vast Mongolian steppe, there are predators, there are prey, and there are protectors. For centuries, Bankhar dogs guarded herd animals from wolves, eagles, and other dangers here. Communist campaigns against traditional herding lifestyles in the 19th century almost wiped the dogs out. But the Mongolian Bankhar Dog Project is helping their numbers to return and protect biodiversity in the process. at a center in central Mongolia, 100 kilometers from the capital. Batbatar Tumubata and his team research and breed the bankhas. After getting a trained bankha, some herders tell him that livestock losses of around 60 are now down to 0. This stops them from hunting predators, which are often endangered species themselves.
Юу ч гэсэн манай төсөл бол чоноос болон бусад махчтай асуудал малыг бүрэн хамгаалж байгаа. Тэгээ яг үнэхээр ингээд нэг өөрийнх нь халаастай мөнгөрүүл ингээд ороод байдгүй бол тэд нар чинь буудаад авах шалтгаан бол байхгүй шүү дээ. Уул нь үндсэн логик нь.
But human conflict is just one of the threats to these animals. Their habitat is at risk due to climate change and a rapid increase in grazing livestock, according to the Nature Conservancy.
According to some study, almost 70% of Mongolian grasslands are overgrazed. That is causing loss of some species.
In a bid to preserve its biodiversity, Mongolia has designated dozens of protected areas, including ones where livestock cannot graze. Like Khustan National Park, it was established in 1993 to reintroduce the Przewalski's horse, considered the last remaining wild horse species on the planet. Declared extinct in the wild over 40 years ago, now there are nearly 400 that roam here. There's hope other species can thrive again too.
There are mountains in the west of Mongolia which is home to globally endangered species such as snow leopard and their prey species known as argali or wild sheep, ibex and many others.
Mongolia plans to create a lot more protected areas, 120 million acres, 30% of the country by 2030. But nearly 30% of Mongolia's population are nomadic herders, according to the UN Development Programme. So limiting grazing is usually not an option. Around 10 kilometers beyond Khusta's borders, herder Itshe Bayambajov and her husband look after a herd of 500 animals. A job that's becoming tougher, she says. Experts say improving herding practices could help protect this fragile landscape, and the bankhas could come in here too. Today, Batbatar is bringing Itshe one of her own. Dogs like Shepherd could help herds travel safely to more varied pastures and allow grasslands more time to regenerate, he says. There's more research needed into how this can counter degradation. But Batbatar hopes to drive efforts to safeguard Mongolian ecosystems, one puppy at a time.
There's so much bad news about... The truth is, I've given up. This is the story of a simple solution, a way to heal our planet. The solution is right under our feet, and it's as old as dirt.
All of our soils that are under chemical conventional agriculture are almost completely devoid of microorganisms.
Modern agriculture was not designed for the betterment of the soil.
Fossil fuels are by no means the only thing that is causing climate change. When we damage soils, carbon goes back to the atmosphere.
But when we destroy soil, it releases carbon dioxide.
Biosequestration is using plants, trees, and techniques of grazing and farming to capture carbon and store it in the soil.
We can fix a lot of our climate issues if we bring the CO2 down into a living plant and put it back into the soil where it belongs.
Plants working with soil microorganisms, it seems too simple.
Healthy soils lead to a healthy plant, healthy human, healthy climate.
There could be a way to eat food that heals the planet.
The problem isn't the animal. The problem is where the animals are at.
How do we take waste and repurpose and reuse it, because it's really not waste?
The poop has to stay in the loop.
Compost is just one of a suite of soil-based carbon capture solutions.
We know how to do it. And if we continue to scale over 30 years,
The Garden of Eden that it once was by regeneration.
To see biodiversity return to a place that was completely devastated.
That gives me hope.
Our health and the health of our planet are connected.
If you look over here, my neighbor's land that has been chemical fallow, then you look over at our paddocks, you have a diversity of different plant species. Which model do you want your food to be produced from? The answer is pretty simple to me.
I'll make you a deal. I won't give up, and neither should you.
All right, picture this. You're strolling through the Swiss Alps, morning mist curling around the mountains, and suddenly, bam! Hundreds of cows are parading down the village street, each one blinged out like it's headed to the world's fanciest runway. Welcome to the Swiss Cow Parade, or as the locals call it, Alpafahrt. It's hands down one of the wildest, most colorful traditions you'll ever see, and trust me, I've seen a few. So what's actually going on here? Every autumn, after months of grazing in the high alpine meadows, Swiss farmers bring their cows back down to the valleys for winter. But they don't just stroll home, they throw a party. Think flower crowns, giant bells that echo for miles, and cows dressed up more stylishly than most people at a music festival. This is way more than just a fun excuse for a parade. The whole village turns out, with families lining the streets, musicians playing jolly Swiss tunes, and tables piled high with fresh cheese and local treats. It's like a moving festival celebrating the cows, the farmers, and a way of life that goes back centuries. And the cows? They're absolute celebrities. The queen of the herd, the cow who produced the most milk that year, gets the fanciest headdress, sometimes a literal floral masterpiece. You'll see little kids running up to pet the cows, tourists snapping 1,000 photos, and farmers beaming with pride. But here's the best part. These parades aren't just for show. The tradition has deep roots in Swiss culture. It's about community, hard work, and respect for nature. The cows spend the summer munching on wild alpine herbs, which makes Swiss cheese and chocolate taste next level. The parade is the big thank you for their hard work, and for the farmers, it's a way to show off their beloved animals and connect with neighbors before the long winter. If you ever get the chance to visit Switzerland in September, you have to see it for yourself. Follow the sound of cowbells echoing through the mountains, grab a hunk of fresh cheese, and join the party. Trust me, there's nothing quite like standing on a cobbled street in a tiny Swiss village, surrounded by flower-crowned cows and the happiest people you'll ever meet. It's a perfect blend of tradition, celebration, and a little bit of alpine craziness. So next time you think about Switzerland, don't just picture snowy peaks and chocolate. Imagine a parade of cows, strutting their stuff and stealing the show. Thanks for watching, and if you ever find yourself in the Alps, don't miss the cow parade. You'll have a story to tell for the rest of your life.
Activists behind an awareness-raising project about the climate crisis are wrapping up a 12,400-mile trek by life-size wooden puppet animals and their puppeteer escorts from Africa. The project, known as The Herds, has taken the crews and their animals from Kinshasa, Congo, through over 24 cities, across African jungles and deserts, and along European coasts to reach Norway. The venture has involved some 1,000 trained puppeteers who manipulate the wooden animals with lifelike articulations, gestures and movements.
Push on to the middle of the river!
The Herds began in the rainforest and has ended in the Arctic Circle, meeting the British King along the way. The parade started with 15 puppets, including elephants, giraffes, gorillas and lions, and grew to 65, including wolves and reindeer in Europe.
BBC investigation has found that the firm providing armed security to guard sites where aid is distributed in Gaza has used members of a US biker gang with a history of hostility to Islam. The BBC's confirmed that members of the Infidels Motorcycle Club work for the private contractor hired by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, often known as the GHF. Well, that is, of course, the aid operation backed by Israel and the United States. The contractor said it didn't screen people for affiliations unrelated to their job performance. The GHF said it had zero tolerance for any hateful biases or conduct. Well, I'm joined in the studio by Andy Verity, who's been working on that investigation. Andy, first of all, just tell us more about this biker gang from the evidence that you gathered.
Yeah, of course, Regina. So they take their name from Infidels Motorcycle Club, English translation of an Arabic word that I think probably isn't used that much by Muslims. The word is kafir, to refer to an unbeliever or a non-Muslim or infidel. So that's where the name comes from. It was set up by US military veterans of the Iraq War back in 2006, and it's grown rapidly since then, hundreds of members. And what's really striking is the iconography of the group. So they have a skull logo, for example, on their website until recently, of the violent Marvel comic book character, Punisher, and that's a symbol which has been appropriated by white supremacist groups. And it's inscribed with the word kafir in Arabic script. Now, some wear tattoos, Crusader cross tattoos, hats celebrating the year 1095, which, if you know your history, was the year that Pope Urban II launched the First Crusade, calling all Muslims quotes, vile race, and urging Europeans to recapture the Holy Land. So it's a sensitive subject that they're playing on. Gang members see themselves as modern crusaders. Many have these crosses on the backs of their biker jackets, or they're tattooed on their forearms or their shoulders. And we've discovered that they're currently hosting anti-Muslim hate speech on their Facebook site, and also have previously held a pig roast in defiance of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan.
And how did these bikers get involved in running security for the GHF thousands of miles away?
Well, they're all ex-veterans, and the Infidels is mostly ex-veterans, and the attraction was the money. According to our sources and contract documents we've seen, they're paying each of them about $980 a day. That's about £720 every day, including expenses, rising to about $1,500 for team leaders. So if they're there all year, they can make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And we've got images of some of the people in this gang. I mean, you identified the names of some of them.
Yes.
How did you then establish that they were working for this agency?
Well, this is interesting because at first we were up against a wall. There was just one member of the gang who we knew about. That was Johnny Taz Mulford. He's a former sergeant in the US Army, and he posted a picture of himself on the gang's page, posing with a machine gun. And then there was another picture with 1095 tattooed across his chest. Now, we emailed Infidels MC for comment, and what happened was, in response, Mr. Mulford instructed his fellow gang members not to reply to the BBC, but forgot to take us off when he hit reply all, thereby disclosing email addresses and names of other members. So we got that. We also spoke to Infidels insiders, and we were able to match up names with public information about Infidels leadership to arrive at 10 bikers who are from Infidels, who are leading the teams in Gaza, where people have died. And there have been all kinds of accusations and counter-accusations. Now, UGS, according to estimates by a former contractor, at least 40 bikers are among the 320 people they've hired.